trouble with this? Are you in trouble with this? Yeah. The iPad. Yeah. The iPad. HDMI. You don't have a different. You have 3 slots. I'll just use the.
Welcome to the December 12, 2018 meeting of the City of Lake Forest Plan Commission. I'm Rosemary Kerr, Chairman of the Commission. And at this time, I would like to ask members of the Commission to introduce themselves, starting on my far left with our newest member,
Steve Douglas.
Ramo Piketty.
Monica Ruggles.
Rosemary Kerr.
Guy Berg.
Michael Freeman.
Susan Athenson.
And from city staff, we have Kathy Cerniak, Director of Community Development. Our first action this evening is recognition of past Plan Commissioner Tim Henry. Tim, would you like to come forward? We want to thank Tim for serving on the Plan Commission. Tim was raised in the city of Lake Forest.
Thanks for
And has raised his family here as well. Good to see you. And just to recognize some of the developments and subdivisions that Tim was involved in: Amberley Woods Commercial Site Development, St. James Subdivision, Oak Knoll Woodlands, TIF District in 2014, the Laurel and Western Avenues redevelopment, the condo development approval at McKinley in Wisconsin, Waterway Gas and Wash, Estate Lane, McKinley Road redevelopment, and Chase Bank. He's also was involved in various code updates and discussions and zoning map updates, and his current knowledge of commercial real estate was a great asset for the entire commission. So thank you, Tim, for your service, and we'd like to give you this back.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, all. Good luck.
I would also like to welcome our newest commission member. Oh, sorry, please.
I would just say, you know me, I'm not short for words. Thank you, Chairman Kerr, and my fellow esteemed commissioners for the opportunity to serve the city of Lake Forest. Special thank you to Kathy personally, all the city staff for their support in our efforts, and thank you to all the multitude of volunteers on the boards and commissions in our town that make it the really special place it is. So thank you all for serving and for all of your support, Kathy. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I would like to give a brief introduction to our newest commission member, Stephen Douglas, who's been in Lake Forest since 1988 and has previously volunteered for several commissions here. He was on the City of Lake Forest Historic Preservation Commission for 6 years. He was also on the Forest Park Board of Directors and the Lake Forest Preservation Foundation Board of Directors. Steve works with Green Court Partners, which is an owner of property in the 4th Ward, So he has active commercial real estate experience within the city of Lake Forest and is helping us with that by serving on the Comprehensive Plan Committee for Ward 4. And we know that his experience as licensed architect and an individual involved in commercial real estate will be quite beneficial to the commission. And now we will have consideration of approval of the minutes of the August 8th, 2018 Plan Commission meeting. Are there any comments on the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as drafted.
Second?
Kathy, I just have one question. On page 3, there seemed to be a typo at the second to last paragraph. I believe you want the word threatened as opposed to the typo that's there. Does anyone else have any comments?
No.
Motion to approve the minutes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The minutes are approved. Now we'll proceed to consideration of a request for a special use permit to authorize Kuro, a full-service sushi restaurant and bar, to occupy space in an existing building at 950 Northwestern Avenue, commonly known as Westwood Square. The property is located within 150 feet of property zoned for residential use. Property owner is Westwood Center LLC, with Todd Altunian, Nicole Altunian, Jennifer Bianchi, and James Altunian II as owners. The tenant is proposed to be Kuro LLC, owned by Joe, Nami, and Naomi Choi. And Peter Whitmer, architect, will be making the presentation. Mr. Whitmer? At this time, I would like to swear in everyone who believes that they will be speaking tonight before the commission, either as a member of the public or as part of the petitioner. So if anyone plans to speak, would you please rise, and I'll swear you in. Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you are about to give or have previously given is true and correct to your best knowledge?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Whitmer, please proceed.
Thank you. Yeah, this restaurant partition is basically going in the old Westwood Bistro space, and we're really occupying the same footprint of it, using the same kitchen, using the same outdoor space, using the same trash enclosure. So it's really similar. I think what's happened to the overall complex is the Altunian family has purchased the overall Westwood Square, and I think there has been some issues in the past, and typically they had to do with more management and mismanagement of the facility. So I think now that we have a local owner, those anything that does come up can get addressed immediately. And this has both been from a tenant side and I think probably a neighborhood side too. It sort of works both ways. The sushi restaurant is going to be operated by an experienced operator. They have an existing sushi restaurant in Highland Park. They know their business and feel that this is a great location for it. Just go over a couple of the highlights of the plan. I just have the site plan up here. It's the same as one in your packet. The outdoor space, as I mentioned, will have the same hours as the restaurant itself. It's a 7-day-a-week restaurant, lunch and dinner Monday through Friday and Saturday, with Sunday serving just dinner and not lunch. So it opens at 3 on Sundays. The requirements before that were part of the other restaurant are going to be adhered to. No drive-through kind of facility using the drive around, delivery hours within business hours, and then trash being maintained and also limited to the hours stated in the packet. I think it's 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. For that. The parking available in the lot, employees will park across in the underneath the viaduct and over in the train lot, so that they won't take up spaces on Western Avenue. I think that's pretty much the highlights. You know, we're excited about having another restaurant come to town. We feel like it's the what our CBD needs, and the vitality of keeping it, and you know, think it's a good mix for their menu, and really something that we don't have currently in town, and will be a great amenity to our business district. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the petitioner who will be speaking?
I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you. And Kathy, would you present the position and report from the city?
Sure. Thank you, Chairman Kerr, members of the commission. This matter is before you because, as Mr. Whitmer noted, it is a restaurant within 150 feet of property zoned for residential use. Restaurants that are not located within 150 feet of residential zoning districts do not require a special use permit. They are permitted outright. This particular site has been a restaurant for decades. Early on, it was a Burger King. More recently was Westwood Square. And most recently, probably for about 18 months, 24 months, it has been vacant. This development, the overall Westwood Square development, in recent years has been a problem. The previous owner, not the current owner, really failed to properly maintain the overall site, the building. There were issues with tenants. Many tenants left. The city had many code violations that we were dealing with. So when this property transferred into new ownership, it really provided an opportunity to see some improvement and to really revitalize that area. The current owners are local. We've been in regular communication with them. There already been some improvements made on the site. And really this site is more important perhaps now than it ever has been to our central business district, because we have the new Laurel and Western Avenue development only recently being occupied. A little over 50% of the apartments are occupied. The first condominium building, perhaps the first quarter of 2019, will be seeking a conditional occupancy permit for the base building. 3 or 4 of the single-family homes are under construction. 1 actually is occupied. So there is a growing population of residents in that area, joining other multifamily developments, single-family neighborhoods that can really benefit for revitalization of this particular development with retail businesses, service businesses, and restaurants. In all of our recent resident surveys, the one thing we hear from residents is they would like more restaurants in our community. So this is, again, is a location where there has been a restaurant. Restaurants within 150 feet of residential zoning districts need to meet the special use criteria, the standard criteria for special use permits, as well as the restaurant performance standards. And both the standards and the criteria are detailed in the staff report. Based on staff's analysis, we do present positive findings on all of those standards and criteria. We are recommending approval subject to, I believe it's 13 recommended conditions of approval. Some of those conditions really apply to the overall Westwood Square development site. And these conditions really align very closely with the conditions that were approved for Westwood Bistro. The conditions really speak to overall maintenance of the site, maintaining the perimeter fencing along the west side of the site where the alley immediately abuts several single-family homes, keeping that fence in good condition, making sure it's solid. The conditions speak to trash collection and deliveries. In the past, there have been issues with those. Assuring that we don't have trash collection at 5 a.m. is very important because of the proximity of single-family homes. The conditions speak to use of the alley from Woodland Road exiting onto Western Avenue to avoid the impact of direct headlights onto neighboring residential homes. The conditions speak to parking. This site is unusual in our business district is in that there is a significant number of on-site parking spaces. Most of our businesses in the core area have no on-site parking spaces. But even with that, in the event that parking becomes tight on the site, the conditions do require that employees, not just of the restaurant, but of all businesses in the development, move to the remote parking, which is available within a block and a half walk on the east side of the railroad tracks. That parking during the day is permit parking, as is all of our employee remote parking. But in the evening, there is no permit required or fee for parking in that area. So this particular development has the benefit of underground parking, surface parking, and parking in the remote lot. No parking, either by employees or customers, is permitted on residential streets. That has not been an issue in the past, but we certainly have had communication with the police department in the past to assure that if that becomes an issue, we would address it immediately and certainly work with the property owners to address that. The restaurant performance standards do require regular maintenance of ventilation systems and regular reporting of that maintenance to be provided to the city. The hours of operation, in the petitioner statement, you have the hours of operation as stated. The closing time for that was in the special use permit for the most recent restaurant was 11 p.m. So we are recommending that as a time when the site, all outdoor activity, any cleanup activity would need to cease. And the final point I'll mention without going through all the conditions is that our code does not permit amplified music outdoors. So on the patio, that really is important, again, because of the proximity to residential homes. I would be happy to address any questions or speak to any of the conditions more in detail, but staff does recommend approval. Again, you do have findings in the staff report, and if you choose to do so, it would be appropriate to forward a recommendation to the City Council in support of this, subject to conditions of approval, either as presented or as modified.
Thank you. And our first round of questions, I'll call on each commissioner, and then after that, it's open for whatever commissioners would like to ask additional questions. And tonight, we're going to start with Commissioner Piketty.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Thanks to the petitioners and the city for a very comprehensive package, and Kathy for that great briefing. Because of that, I have no questions.
Commissioner Athenson?
Oh, okay. Hi, Peter. I just have a few questions. So as you know, I'm a neighbor of this property and pretty familiar with some of the issues we've had over the years with it. So that's probably what my questions are going to pertain to. First of all, I want to thank the Altunian family for taking this on, and we're so happy that someone's going to maintain this building and have another restaurant there. So I think it'd be a great addition. So I just have a couple questions about, and they basically pertain to the conditions and kind of the issues we've had in the past. One of the big issues really has been the ventilation system in the past. And I mean, we never really had any clear-cut way to know who was maintaining that, and if there was an issue, you know, who was responsible for maintaining that. You know, you'd suddenly smell burgers or something going on in the neighborhood and you weren't supposed to. And I noticed in your packet you said that the ventilation was going to be interior. So can you just explain a little bit about how, first of all, you keep it interior, and then is there some kind of maintenance schedule that you have going forward that if there's an issue we can resolve it?
It is a hood system, so when you say interior, the hood's inside, the ventilation goes up through
So it comes out.
the roof, yeah. So
'cause when I read it, it sounded like it was
doesn't come,
inside.
you know, no, it isn't.
Okay,
I mean,
that was confusing, yeah.
The explanation, I think, of that is just that the hood's inside
Oh,
for that. The maintenance on that is really, is to be performed by the tenant on an ongoing basis, on a monthly basis. They'll see that will be maintained, and then it'll be overseen by the landlord. So if the landlord if it isn't done in a proper manner, then they can take over and do that and back charge the tenant for that maintenance of it. Basically, the maintenance is cleaning the filters on the inside and then emptying the grease trap on the top where the fan hood sits on top. There's a grease interceptor that you clean out. When those get filled up, then you have a problem with that. So that's
And
the
so that's
maintenance of
usually
it.
on a monthly basis.
Typically, yeah. It really depends on how much fried foods you cook, and so a Burger King would do it quite frequently. They probably will not be cooking that much fried food, so probably won't need that much maintenance on it. But it's really about how much you use the grease, and because grease gets in it, and that's really what you're cleaning out for that. With this menu, there isn't a high volume of
Right, just the tempura,
grease
right.
foods for that. Yeah, that they would have for that.
Okay,
All right.
and then I have a question about deliveries. So you're talking about deliveries are going to be starting at 7 a.m. in the morning. And you are just abutting some residents right behind there. Was there any consideration to maybe making that a little bit later?
Yeah, I think they're just looking at, typically they have control over the deliveries and some portion of it. I think it's important that it get done before lunchtime so that the parking lot isn't full and the staff is
Right,
there.
right.
So, typically it's 9 or 10, for that, for those deliveries. So I think we could look at,
Yeah,
trying to
it's
move
just a
that
little
back
early
as
if your bedroom
early-
is right back there. You know how close they are right there. So.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the other issue that we kind of always had with this property was the landscaping on Woodland and also with the fence. And I noticed part of the fence is down. I mean, that has always been an ongoing issue. So, so the landlord is going to be responsible
correct,
for that, right? And
correct.
so they're going to maintain the fencing, the landscaping. And then also, I noticed we kind of have this in the conditions that it should be on Woodland, but I'd also ask you to take a look at Western, because sometimes there's a little spot there on Western that might need some attention occasionally too. So it's just a question that, you're gonna take care of that, and you're gonna look at that, right? So,
Yeah, so that's part of the maintenance of the whole facility, and I think that you'll see a difference in that from what it was in the past.
okay, because sometimes the fence is falling down and the neighbors have no recourse on how to fix that. And the other thing I was gonna ask you about too was in terms of employee break area. I know there's a condition you're not allowing the employees to take their breaks in that alley behind there. There's not a smoking area anywhere here, right? Are employees allowed to smoke anywhere on the property? Okay, because that is an ongoing issue right now. So just be aware that,
Employees are coming out in the back and the smoking and.
yes, and in the front of the property too. So just, yeah. So that needs to be addressed too. I just want to make you
I'm
aware.
not sure that, employees, I think we can control. Other people within
Right,
15 feet of the
right.
building, I don't think you can control people from
No,
smoking
you can't, but you
inside
can,
that. But
just make sure.
employees that are working are one thing, but.
So there's
you know,
no,
they-
and there's no smoking allowed there, and there's no smoking area allowed, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Let's see. So, all right, let's see. I think I'll let everyone else go on, and if I have any more questions. But, by the way, I did receive your certified letter too, so thank you. That was a nice touch to send it to the neighbors certified, so.
Good.
Right. So that's it right now.
Okay. Before I call the next commissioner, I did want to note that in the conditions suggested by the city, there will be a maintenance schedule for the exhaust and filter system in the restaurant that will be submitted to the city and approved prior to the opening of the restaurant. So they should be on a maintenance schedule. And then in the letter we received from Curo, they indicated that the operating hours of the business would handle deliveries. So that should be 11:30 to 9:30 or 10:30 at night. I can't imagine it would usually be that late.
I
Well,
think
there's a
there's some
condition,
confusion on that.
Yeah, there's
I
a
think
condition
deliveries
on
is-
number 3, if you look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
I
says
think.
7 a.m. to
well,
6 p.m. on
Right, I think there was two pieces of that. One is
Okay.
deliveries of takeout food,
Okay.
that type of delivery would happen during their business hours.
Okay.
That's becoming a much more popular thing, and I think
Okay.
we have to understand what that is. And then deliveries coming to the restaurant. So I think that's what the confusion,
Okay.
they were addressing the deliveries of food to people who want it in the community.
Okay, so you would expect then trucks to be delivering food and
Ti-
supplies?
Correct.
Okay.
Typically in the morning.
All right, thanks.
And 7 AM is kind of early.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Freeman?
Thank you. Kathy, anything substantially different between what's proposed here? And I'm focused mostly on the delivery hours and hours of operation, but really any of the other conditions between what the previous restaurant had available and what we're looking at here today.
There are really no substantial differences. We tried to mirror those very closely. Certainly, adjustments could be made to the permitted delivery hours, but we also don't want to create an unworkable situation, so there has to be that reasonableness. And we don't want to create something that we can't enforce.
Right. So the deliveries for the previous restaurant were under the same hours of operation that we're dealing with here?
They were, and we did have violations from
Okay.
time to time. So we worked to address that, and again, I think a close working relationship with the property owner, a close working relationship with the business owner. Our experience to date with the new owner is much different. I will be the first to say there were issues and repeated issues with the previous situation.
Okay. What about seating capacity? And maybe Peter has to answer that, but just comparatively speaking to the operations of the prior restaurant and what they're looking at here, can either of you
Defer to
speak to that?
Sure. It's very similar, about 80, I think about 86, something like that inside, including the bar area. And basically the bar area is the same as the old one. The dining area is pretty much the same. And then they have an addition of a sushi bar in the back, which seats about 10 people. Outside areas, seating capacity is the same as it was before. So very similar to what the other seating capacity was for the other restaurant.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Commissioner Ruggles?
Okay, Peter, I just have a couple questions about the building itself. I noticed on the floor plan that you're adding one more additional door to the patio. So is that door just going to match the existing front entry door? that you
That's the
have
idea. Yeah, that door's
presently?
basically it's difficult to get service out when customers are coming in and then serve food out through the to the patio.
Okay.
So that's what that's for.
Okay, so I saw that any substantial changes would have to go to BRB, but Kathy, do you think just a simple door like this would be acceptable?
Yes, we would not consider that to be substantial.
Okay, that's great. And I know that the signage goes to BRB, but do you envision something as simple that is presently on the building?
That's what I would think, that we would do similar type signage that would go on top of the building.
Okay,
Or, as it is currently, because I think it's pretty effective in terms of people who don't know what it is, seeing it and all that. It seems to have worked pretty
right,
well.
because it's up high like that.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Berg?
Thank you. I'm also pleased that we have a new owner, and one that we couldn't pick a better one, I think, actually, so I'm glad you're at the helm here. I have a question. I was trying to find the actual name that you're proposing for the restaurant. And I see in your drawings, there's one reference and another one to a sushi restaurant, Japanese sushi restaurant and bar. I'm just a little concerned about the word bar being in your name, particularly because part of the restaurant's facade is visible from the residential district. So I don't know if that's a signage issue so much, but I think it's okay to crack that question open here. Does anybody have an idea what the name of the restaurant will be on the signage?
The name of the restaurant's going to be Kuro.
Oh, okay.
So it won't have bar and sushi restaurant, which I think is quite tasteful.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I think it's interesting and it has some.
Yeah, there were
Japanese
just,
meaning that-
there were just a couple
No,
references in
It's a
there.
good point. I think all those letters would be tough to get
Yeah,
up. There,
I think that'll be a great addition to the restaurant downtown area. It'd be great. Now, I remember in the past, we had Burger King, and we also had the King Ma. You know, they coexisted, I think, nicely. So Kathy, could another restaurant also occupy one of those former suites that are now vacant?
Yes.
Okay. And it sounds like we have quite a bit of information in our conditions of approval, and most of the questions I had have already been asked. Maybe this is for staff as much as for the petitioner. You know, I guess it's the designer in me, but, you know, if there had been a way to shield the actual view of the restaurant and the parking lot from that residential street, I think Atteridge is the one that probably looks through one of the openings on the west side of the parking lot the most. Over the years, there's been a nice little corner park created by the city. And when I was visiting the site this and last week, I was trying to imagine if there was a way to create a little bit more landscape screening, not necessarily on the restaurant side, because I think the fence and the plantings there have done about as much as they can do, but I was wondering if there was something that might be reviewed for the opposite side of Woodland, maybe on the Parkway area. I know there's a couple of very small evergreen trees that look like they've been planted, maybe by the owner and Atteridge, I'm not sure, but I'm wondering if that's something that could be looked at a little bit more. I drove around the Central Business District yesterday trying to find restaurants or public houses that are located in this sort of fashion, where somebody in their living room would look out and see a restaurant activity, you know, entrance and so forth from cars and parking. And I really couldn't find it. The only thing that came close was the Deer Path Inn, and that's so formal and so spectacular. I wished I lived across the street from it to have to endure that. That probably raises your property value. So I'm just wondering, Kathy, is there some way that perhaps staff and the arborist could look at a way to sort of maybe create a visual break? You know, it would be along the north, you know, side of Woodland. You know, with the idea being when you come down Atteridge and you go in those homes, imagining you live there, and you would try to keep that restaurant. I mean, if there was no exit entrance there, that would solve the problem. You could run the fence there, but I hesitate to bring that up as a issue. There's really not an adequate amount of visual angle if you were to force traffic to go all the way through the alley and exit onto Western. I'm afraid we'd have a lot of people getting hit there by that sidewalk by the laundry, you know, if they were to do. So I'm not proposing we close that off, but if there was some way to maybe work on the other side of the street to possibly address that.
That access is important for safety and emergency vehicles and circulation. A number of years ago, in response to concerns raised by the neighbors, the city closed off the east end of Atteridge, put up a guardrail and some
Right.
plantings. We could certainly look at that small open area there between Woodland and Atteridge and see if some enhancement with year-round screening will fit in there and will thrive in there. So we can certainly do that.
Yeah, I'd feel much better about that. From a planning standpoint, I think that's a good thing for the neighbors and for their property values. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Douglas?
And all my questions have been asked and answered already. Thank you.
Well, I just have one question, and might be more appropriate for Kathy. As you may have some employees parking on McKinley at the end of that lot, how's the lighting for them at night, thinking of the restaurant hours, so that they have safe access to and from?
A number of years ago, I think it was when the grill went in on the corner of Laurel and Western Avenue, the city did enhance lighting, pedestrian lighting, to light the pedestrian way under the viaduct. We can certainly relook at that, but I know attention was paid to that in the past.
Thank you. And open it up now to any other questions for the petitioners or city staff from the commission?
Oh, I have a question. I just noticed, you know, I know the trash has been in the same location. This is something I'm gonna throw out there. Is there a better location for the trash that's not in the neighbor's backyard like that? I mean, I know it's really a tight space, but I just thought have you looked at that at all?
You know, I think we've felt that where we have it, is where it's been.
That's
We
what it's
haven't really
called, yeah.
looked at other things. I mean, I think, this is probably not the first time we're gonna come back to redo this building and rework it. I think if we look, and when we work on the building more to change the exterior, appearance of the building or make some more modifications, we can look at, if there's a better way to integrate trash any other way.
Because, it just makes me think of like at Market Square, now there's no, in the back alleys there, it's nice now. It's not a service alley, so they move all the garbage off-site. Just wondering if it's better to take maybe the garbage and move it into like the first parking lot there tucked in by the gate on, or the fence on Woodland, maybe? I don't know. It's just a thought that I had, because it seems like it's so close to the neighbors there. I wouldn't want to smell that, like on a warm summer day or something, and you're sitting on your back porch.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with how well we maintain it and how well we take the trash out, and we don't leave it in there long and it doesn't build up too. I would say that for this petition, I'd like to keep it where it is, but, for future things, if we have different, if the opportunity comes and a redesign of where we do, and, there's some other better place, I'd be happy to look at that in the
Yeah,
future.
I mean, if there's, it's so tight, but if there's a better location. in the
It is,
future,
the
yeah.
site is really tight.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Thanks.
That's it.
Any other questions from members of the commission? Then we'll now open for public testimony. Any speakers from the public who would like to come forward? We ask that each speaker take no more than 5 minutes. And actually, before we start that, I do want to note that we did receive 2 letters from neighbors, each in support of the opening of this restaurant. There was one person who had indicated they may be speaking in public testimony. If there's anyone else who didn't take the oath earlier but would like to speak, please let me know, and I'd be happy to swear you in. Yes. Would you stand, please? Okay. Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you are about to give is true and correct to your best knowledge? Okay. Please come forward and state your name and your address. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Marlis Turek. I live at 196 Atteridge Road.
Could you move the microphone closer
Right.
to you?
Let's
Thanks.
start over. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
I'm Marlis Turek. I live at 196 Atteridge Road. I am the neighbor whose front door directly faces this restaurant. I'm the one who has the little evergreen trees. And I want to thank each of you for asking such wonderful questions. You really do seem to have some idea of the concerns we've had over the years, and I appreciate it very much. I do have a list, though, of things that you may not be aware of, and it's a little disjointed because I was taking notes as I was listening to you. Just going to go through it. There is, first of all, a better place to put the garbage unit. At the southwest corner, there at one time was a little garbage enclosure, but the previous owner built it without permission and they had to take it down. But if they put a garbage unit right in there, there's still room for the trucks and even the fire engines to get all the way around the service drive. And so the restaurant people would simply have to walk a little further to empty the trash. The north wall needs to be further shielded from the street, as one of you mentioned. There needs to be window treatment consistently along that wall. I think what they have there now is sufficient. It shields the passersby in the homes from what's going on in what will be the bar area of this restaurant, and yet from the inside of the restaurant, it still gives light from the street. The problem is they have to keep the shades down all the time, and the previous owner wouldn't do that. And reporting it and calling the police and calling Kathy constantly is a very laborious, upsetting thing to have to do. And I was the one who was usually always on the phone trying to get things done. The patio, if it's used, there should be, again, no outdoor music or singing. The hours of the patio need to be limited. I think the previous restaurant, they had to start closing it down by 9 o'clock so that it could be cleaned. It should be limited as to numbers of months during the year and hours. And when the patio is not in use during those off months, the furniture should be removed immediately and taken to another location, because what happens is passersby, restaurant employees, and just people walking through the neighborhood want to sit in that patio, particularly if they keep the gas fireplace going, because it looks like a charming place to be. So it needs to be closed down and a little fence or something with a sign put up saying patio closed. Fire pit, okay. Deliveries and trash, huge problem. One of the problems is that the trash collection company doesn't want to get out of his truck after he gets the trash to close and lock the doors again. So the doors remain open for hours at a time. There was in the past a horrible, disgusting grease holding thing that would never get emptied and would look like slop poured all over the front of it. I'd have to constantly complain that the enclosure itself was filthy and never cleaned up. People who going through the neighborhood would just throw things over the fence because it was an easy way to put things in the garbage, except that it would just fall all over the place. Deliveries are a huge problem, and the previous owner, restaurant owner, said, oh, we only get one delivery a week or one every few days. That was not correct. They get deliveries from multiple purveyors all day long, all week long. There's the liquor delivery people, there's the bakery delivery people, there's the fruit and vegetable delivery people, there's the meat delivery people, there's the fish delivery people. And each one of those deliveries comes, at least in the past, when the restaurant is not open. They all had keys, they could go in whenever they wanted. Delivery trucks have requirements, they have backup beepers, and they always would park and go in the front door, never the service drive door. They'd have a key to the front door, and so they would bring in these huge delivery trucks with their backup beepers at 6 or 7 in the morning, sometimes at night, constantly going on. Same for refuse and removal. Okay, the beepers. The staff of the restaurant, their parking is required in a certain location, but during the evening, as the patrons of the restaurant leave, one by one the staff goes and gets their cars and moves it to the parking lot of the restaurant, so that when the restaurant closes, they have easy access to their cars that are right there. In addition to that, they yell and scream across the parking lot. They have parties sometimes. They start their car engines with the booming box car music that goes on. And anyone with a motorcycle starts revving the motor at 11 o'clock at night. And I know some of the neighbors were getting older. We go to bed earlier. We sleep later. We're retired or retiring. And it presents a real problem for us. Screening, I'm so glad one of you brought that up, and particularly about that entrance and exit on Woodland. The new owner of the property seems to have made some vegetation changes. They removed 3 beautiful green arborvitae from the northeast corner, just cut them away. And then they also cut down a very lovely, huge evergreen bush at the Woodland entrance that helped block at least 3 or 4 cars from our view. The city, in addition, does not take care of that little shrubby area across from my house, the one that the city used to block off Atteridge. They have failed to clean it. They have failed to replant it. We've had several car accidents there from people not stopping and just plowing into the fence and the gates. One person tried to drive down the sidewalk. The plants have been destroyed. They've never been replaced. The city so far has not even cleaned up the leaves from last fall. I have actually started putting down weed and feed in the park because they don't do it. They've decided that it's a cul-de-sac, and the city has some kind of idea that they're not going to take care of any cul-de-sacs anymore. They're going to let the neighbors do it. Well, unfortunately, I'm the neighbor, and I can't do it. And I say it's not a cul-de-sac, it's an extension of the Pocket Park. It's a major thoroughfare to West Park. People going to the high school, going to West Park constantly, day and night, go past that area, and it needs to be taken care of. I've even put in some plants myself and put down mulch. But I'm 72 years old, about to be 73, and I can't do it anymore. And it isn't fair. So that has to be addressed. Exterior maintenance. The old Burger King would do it in the middle of the night. Finally, that stopped. But I have to call the police. I have to call my alderman. Once I woke an alderman up in the middle of the night. I said, if I'm going to be awakened, you're going to be awakened too, because it's not fair. So some kind of rules need to be put in place. An easier way to get these things done, to make sure people abide by what they're supposed to do. I've had the police be extremely rude to me when I called. Once there were a group of employees from the restaurant loitering, smoking in that back area. And it looks bad for our neighborhood. Our homes are getting much more valuable. They need to be addressed that way. And it's not only a historic neighborhood, it's a historic neighborhood, not only a residential neighborhood. And it needs to be taken care of. So when I call the police, very often they come to my house and they say, what do you want me to do, lady? Where should they smoke? Well, that's not my job. It's the job of the city or the owner to give them a smoking place, out of sight of the residential area, and not with tons of cigarette smoke blowing into nearby neighbors' backyards where children play. It's not fair to us. Sure, we want a nice restaurant. I hope it's successful. It sounds lovely. But all these things need to be taken care of. And I hope that you'll address each of them and get it done. The HVAC, the old restaurant, the bistro, had valet service, at least during the first opening, because they expected a crowd of people, and that would be very nice too. So that people don't end up parking on the residential streets.
Excuse me, Ms. Turk, you have gone past the 5
I'm
minutes.
sure I have. Will anybody yield?
Are there any other points that you would like to provide to the city? Because some of what you're discussing is really beyond the purview of the petitioner.
Okay. I will write a memo to whomever, talk to my neighbor, and maybe we can get some of this done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak? Yes, please identify yourself and give your name and address.
Hi, I'm Tom Paulson. I'm 902 Oakwood. I'm about 800 feet from the restaurant. We moved to town here 4 years ago, almost to the day that Westwood opened. I was pretty excited to have a restaurant 800 feet away. I was very disappointed when I came home one weekend and it was closed. So I'm looking forward to another restaurant, sushi. I have a meeting or dinner with my wife at another town restaurant in 4 minutes, so I'm going to make this short. So we would love to have a sushi restaurant in town. We only have one that I know of, and we would love to have that.
Thank you. Yes, but I do need to swear you in. You did? Okay, fine. Would you please give your name and address at the podium? Thank you.
My name is Roberta Boyaris. I'm 947 North Oakwood. My lot and their lot touch each other. I'm right behind the restaurant. And sometimes being a neighbor with a restaurant is not the nicest thing. But anyway, my question is that when these rules are being broken, who do I call? Do I call the police? They're not, I don't think they think that that's a police matter. I haven't had very good luck with them. What I had done in the past is I went to visit the people at the restaurant and tried to work out how we could work out these things when their garbage trucks, were coming at 5 o'clock and waking me up, 50 feet from my bed. So anyway, my question is, who do we call? If we have problems, what are we supposed to do? Call the police or what?
I'm going to ask city staff to respond to that, please.
Sure. I would say in this case, we have local property owners, and certainly talking directly with them. If the police are called, I do the next morning get a report, and certainly you can communicate directly with me and the Community Development Department. We are responsible for assuring that the conditions of the special use permit are enforced. If there are violations, we work with the business owner, we work with the property owner. If they are consistently violated, then we would bring the matter back to the Plan Commission. So I think those three options. From my conversations with the property owner, I believe that they are interested in hearing from the neighbors and will do what they can to respond, but the city is certainly willing to play a role in that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public who would like to speak? And Mr. Peterson, did you swear in earlier?
I did.
Okay.
Good
Mr.
evening.
Peterson happens to be my next-door neighbor, so.
My name is Corky Peterson. I live at 594 Beverly. I've lived in town since 1974. I'm blessed to have children and grandchildren in town, and I'm also part of the real estate community in town. And I should tell you that, first of all, the real estate community is thrilled at the prospect of this building being renovated. The restaurant it will be a great asset for our community. I think it's interesting that though the real estate market is somewhat sluggish, the community immediately around the downtown area is vibrant. If properties go on market in town, they're quickly snapped up. Everybody wants to be able to walk to town. I shouldn't say everyone. Many people want to walk to town, walk to the train, walk to restaurants, and this is a great opportunity. It's a great location. It's getting us a little bit further north so we can spread out the downtown area. I think, you know, you're going to have permit fees you're going to be collecting. You've got tax revenue you're going to be collecting. You've got new employees coming to town. I think this is a win-win for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public who would like to speak? Okay, then at this point, we will move to any final questions from the commission to petitioner or staff. Any requests for additional information? Commissioners?
Kathy, I'm thinking about Mrs. Turk's testimony. And I'm just seeing if there's any response that you would like to make to any of those. I'm thinking especially about the Atteridge. I know that's probably not in our purview, but, could you respond to the Atteridge area at the end of Atteridge Road there, the dead end?
Sure. That is not an issue for the petitioner, but certainly I can talk with our park staff who maintain parkway or public rights of way that are not parkways, which I think this does fall into. It probably is an area that has not gotten high priority treatment. Again, a number of years ago, the city spent significant dollars in closing off Atteridge, and then we worked with the Regent Road development to have that open space there on the corner of Woodland and Western, the northwest corner, heavily landscaped to really provide a buffer from Western Avenue, from the railroad tracks. And so certainly we can revisit that small triangle area there that's bordered by Oakwood and Atteridge and Woodland and see if we can enhance that. I think that that's a reasonable request, and we could certainly increase our maintenance efforts in that area.
Any other questions from the commission? Well, I believe the staff has responded to public testimony already, unless there are any additional comments you'd like to make.
I would just, Ms. Turek did also mention relocating the trash enclosure area on the site. We have looked at that through the years, and that relocating the trash area to the southwest corner of the property would place it immediately adjacent, not separated by an alley, but place it immediately adjacent to two residential neighboring properties, and the code does not permit that adjacency. It does require a setback. I think the key, and I did look quickly at the conditions, and I think I neglected to put a condition in there that specifically speaks to trash. Certainly a condition could be added that requires that trash enclosure be properly maintained, that it be kept closed except when trash is being put in or taken out, and that regular trash pickups need to occur, and that certainly is something we dealt with in the past, that I don't know what the plan is for trash pickups, but if twice a week isn't enough, then certainly we can require that trash be picked up more frequently. So I think that maintenance of the trash enclosure and assuring that there are properly timed pickups would not be an unreasonable condition to add if the commission chose to do so.
May I ask a question about that? What would be the typical hours for such operations? Trash pickup for other businesses in the area?
The limit that exists right now at Westwood Square is that neither trash nor deliveries can occur before 7 a.m.
Okay, so same as what's already in the recommendations. Thank you.
Those are the current hours. Certainly, the commission could recommend something different than that. What
Well, I
we
just wouldn't want to
see-
do anything different than what other business owners right down the street are getting to do. I mean, that's more my concern. If that's the normal business schedule, then that's fine, but I'm curious to know what do we require of others in that district?
Nothing earlier than 7 a.m.
Okay.
And does that apply to the Jewel, which is adjacent to this property?
Yes.
Okay. If there are no other questions from the commission, then the time for public comment is now closed, and we will have commission discussion among the members. It's an open meeting, and but as I say, it is closed to the public at this point for any further input. Commissioners.
You know, I feel that a lot of the conditions that Kathy's put on the, the recommendation for approval do cover a lot of the issues that the neighbors have brought up. I mean, there are quite a few things here that really, if they're enforced, I think would go far to satisfy a lot of their concerns and objections to past operations. So I feel pretty good about what we have here for approval. And I hear from Kathy that there'll be an additional effort by the city staff to address the landscaping across the street, in particular to maybe enhance screening as well as some increased maintenance as required.
I agree with Commissioner Berg. It'd be nice to have a restaurant in there with an experienced restaurateur, an experienced landlord. So I support the request at hand.
And I'll just, I'll echo that we're, happy that we have a local landlord who has a great history of maintaining our properties, and we're so happy that Carol is coming to town. It's a great addition. But as you can see from the testimony, that this has been a delicate issue for the neighborhood. And it's not so much the conditions that are in place right now, it's the enforcement of them. And they haven't been enforced in the past, and it's been very frustrating for some neighborhoods. So I think you've heard that, and I just would say that you just really, put some attention to this property and really make sure that you're being good neighbors. It's a unique situation compared to other places in town because they are so close to the neighbors. You're really in the backyards of a lot of people. And, even 2 blocks away, I can hear the activity over there with trucks beeping and garbage trucks. So it does carry and impact that neighborhood, and it could be a very negative way. But it can be positive with proper maintenance. The big problems really in the past has been the screening, the smells, the noise, and the trash. I think you heard that pretty clearly. So I'd like to see something a little bit more sympathetic to the neighbors in terms of the hours. I know that that's a normal time, 7 o'clock, but that can be really early. So I don't know if you just adjusted an hour, maybe make it 8 a.m. for trash pickup. I don't think that's really gonna impact too much. And just maybe pay attention to maybe Western too for the landscaping. The other thing that Kathy said she wanted to add a condition, or suggested adding a condition about the trash enclosure area be properly maintained, doors closed when not in use, and regular trash pickups occur, just to have that as an additional condition. And then I also want to just, I don't know if we have this in the conditions, but the smoking is an issue, so that there's absolutely no smoking on the property. So I don't know if that's a condition that we've added, but it is an issue right now with the employees there, so. I mean, that's kind of like, it's assumed, right? You're not supposed, that's a Illinois state law, that you're not supposed to be smoking within 15 feet of a building. So I guess you don't have to put a condition, but at least enforce that. So that would just be my suggestions.
So I would echo the comments and thank you for your investment in the community. I think it's good that in addition to the owners, we have the operator here. And I would just encourage the new operators of the restaurant, you've had an opportunity to hear what the concerns are for the neighbors. It's not up to this commission to regulate where people smoke outside of Illinois law or some of these other issues that are before us. But it is certainly something that I think the new operator, with the encouragement of the owners, could address. So I'm glad that you had the opportunity to hear from the neighbors. And you know, this is a tough place to operate a business. I think you would do well to listen to what we heard tonight, because I think it'll be echoed through the community. That's all I had.
I'm very much in favor of the petition. First of all, I think in the long run, you know, the whole neighborhood's going to benefit tremendously from this recent change in ownership, because I know not only the retail space is being redone, but the entire second floor office space is going to be redone as well as the, you know, work on the exterior of the building. So in the long run, that's a big positive. It sounds like trash is a hot button tonight, so I can tell you that I've had a lot of experience with restaurants, and trash is always one of the big problems. But there are solutions, and if we're going to add a little language to the conditions regarding trash, one thing to consider is the container, because especially for restaurants with food waste going in and liquids, you know, there are appropriate containers that are totally watertight, and when they're closed properly, they don't allow odors to escape either. So with the right container, I think the problems pretty much go away. So I'm very much in favor, and I'm excited to visit this restaurant.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners?
No, I mean, I think the fellow commissioners have stated everything quite well, and I'm in favor of the petition. I think it'll be a great addition to the city.
Well, then with that, I would entertain a motion to consider the request for a special use permit for Curro.
I would make a motion to approve the special use permit with the 13 conditions that have recommendations that have been put in by the staff. I would add a 14th recommendation, which is that maintenance of the trash area, including the use of appropriate dumpsters or containers as determined in consultation with the city, be used, and that enclosure remain closed at all times other than when trash is being removed. Further require cleaning and pickup as often as required to prevent overflow from the dumpsters or containers, and that they comply with the pickup limitations of condition number 3.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any other comments?
I'm just wondering if we want to, under condition 3, it says a sign shall remain posted during the deliveries and trash pickup is permitted only between the hours of 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. on weekdays. Can we change that to 8 p.m.?
I'd probably defer to Commissioner Freeman on that, but if other properties in the area are allowed that service coming in at 7, I don't know if you can make that distinction for this one property.
Yeah, I wouldn't favor it for that reason. I think it would disadvantage what's already going to be a difficult. It's hard to run a restaurant in this city, and I don't know why they would be required to have higher standards.
Well, because they're right next to residential.
Well, but so is Joel.
Right.
Yeah, well, they're not a restaurant. And did we want to put any kind of condition about smoking, or do you think that's not necessary?
I don't know that we have the authority to do it.
I mean, just
would
enforce smoking laws, or is that just not necessary?
You know, I think that the owner of the property and the operator of the restaurant are both here tonight, and I think that they're being intelligent people, that I know that they are, will probably glean from our concern that it would be bad for business to create a habit that it would be easy to eliminate by having a little conference with the employees. maybe they go for a walk down Woodland instead of sitting in the parking, lot and smoking, I think. That,
I'm sorry, but it's closed to public comment now.
Yeah, those were kind of my comments too, Guy. I think that, the operators here, the owners are here. They're in a much better position to enforce those issues with their employees than we are as a commission or the local police department is to be responding to issues like that.
Okay.
I think it's a private sector policing thing, but I think that,
I would point out that one of the conditions does prohibit loitering or employee gathering in the alley. So it doesn't speak specifically to smoking, but to the broader issue of congregation. So I think
Actually,
that,
it does. See, you were on top of it, Kathy. It says no gathering, loitering, or smoking in the alley is permitted, so. Well done.
I'm done.
Okay.
That was my questions.
All those in favor of the action being requested, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion passes. And thank you. I think we're looking forward to a new asset for the community.
Thank you.
In terms of other items now, there are several issues for the commission to address. Opportunity for the public to address the Plan Commission on matters that have not been on the agenda this evening. Seeing no comments. Additional information from staff regards the consideration of the Plan Commission meeting schedule for 2019.
I believe you all received the proposed schedule in your packet. If you choose to do so, it will be appropriate to officially approve a motion approving that. If there are conflicts, we can certainly look at alternate dates, either now or as dates come up.
Yeah, I apologize. I got my packet electronically and I did not have the schedule, and so I have not checked any of the dates. So could I ask that we just defer this for the next meeting?
Could you approve the January date?
Yes.
Sure.
The dates as proposed, I will say throughout the year, are all regularly on the second Wednesday of the month. There are no exceptions. But if you would like to approve the January 9th meeting, then we will bring this back to you for approval for the rest of the year.
Yeah, no objection to January.
All right. However, we need a motion to approve.
A motion would be great so we can officially publish that date.
Motion to approve the January 9 meeting.
Do I hear a second?
Second?
All those in favor of approving Plan Commission meeting for January 9, 2019, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes. And that concludes the Plan Commission meeting for December 12, 2018. Thank you all for your participation.
Thank you.
Look forward to serving you.
Yeah. you.